The world has trained you to be seen, but it has never trained you to become. You have been taught to announce your intentions before they have taken root, to display your ambitions before they have earned their strength, and so you remain as. You are known, but not formidable, visible, but not powerful, present, but not transformed. Understand this. Nothing in nature becomes mighty while it is being watched. The seed does not split open in the presence of an audience. The mountain does not rise in a single day beneath the applause of men. All greatness is born in silence, in darkness. In isolation from distraction, it withdraws first. It disappears, and only then does it emerge with a force that cannot be denied. You say you wish to be powerful, disciplined, unrecognizable. Yet you cling to the habits that make you weak. You cling to comfort, to approval, to the endless pull of trivial things. You reach for distraction as a starving man reaches for crumbs, never realizing that you are starving because you refuse to leave the table of poison. Your life remains the same not because change is impossible, but because you have never been willing to vanish long enough for change to take hold. To disappear is not to escape the world. It is to escape the version of yourself that the world has shaped without your consent. It is to step away from the noise so you can hear your own command. It is to sever yourself from indulgence so you can remember what restraint feels like. It is to face yourself without interruption, without performance, without excuse. For when a man stands alone with himself, he meets his truth. He sees clearly the distance between who he is and who he could become. And in that moment, he is given a choice that few are brave enough to make, to remain familiar or to become unrecognizable. These 90 days are not measured by time. They are measured by death and rebirth. The death of weakness, the death of excuses, the death of the boy who required comfort to survive, and the birth of someone who requires nothing but purpose. You will be forgotten by many during this time. Your absence will go unnoticed by those who never truly saw you, and this is a gift, because you are no longer living to be witnessed. You are living to be forged, and when you return, you will not need to announce your transformation. Your presence will speak it, your discipline will reveal it, your silence will command it. You will return not as the man who left, but as the man who was waiting beneath him all along. Withdrawal from noise is the birthplace of inner authority. From the moment you open your eyes to this world, something has been speaking at you, not to you, but at you. Voices layered upon voices, expectations layered upon expectations, the opinions of people who do not carry your burdens, the judgments of people who do not live your consequences, the endless current of distraction that pulls at your attention until your mind no longer belongs to you. And slowly, without ceremony, without resistance, you surrendered your command, not in a single moment of weakness, but in 1,000 small permissions. You allowed the noise to think for you. You allowed the noise to decide for you. You allowed the noise to become you. You may not even remember when it began. Perhaps it was when you first learned that approval felt safer than honesty. Perhaps it was when you realized that silence made others uncomfortable, and so you filled it with words that did not come from your truth. Perhaps it was when you discovered that distraction was easier than discipline, and so you adapted. You became accessible, available, reachable at all times. Your attention became a public place, and anyone could enter it. But a man without a private mind is not a man of authority. He is a reflection, a surface that mirrors whatever stands before it. Understand what noise truly is. It is not merely sound. It is influence without permission. It is the constant shaping of your thoughts by forces that do not serve your becoming. It is the subtle erosion of your will. And the most dangerous part is not that it exists, but that you have grown comfortable inside it. You have begun to fear its absence. You reach for your devices not because you need them, but because you fear what remains when they are gone. Yourself, because when the noise disappears, there is nothing left to hide behind. No stimulation to numb you, no entertainment to sedate you, no external voice to drown out your internal one. There is only you, and the questions you have avoided, the truths you have postponed, the discipline you have delayed. This is why so few ever withdraw. They believe silence is empty. They believe solitude is loneliness. They believe stepping away is weakness, but they are wrong. Silence is not empty. It is unclaimed territory. And solitude is not loneliness. It is independence. Authority is not given to the man who is always present. It is given to the man who is always in command of himself. And self-command cannot be formed in chaos. It cannot be formed while your attention is fragmented into 100 directions. It cannot be formed while you are reacting to every notification, every opinion, every invitation to abandon yourself. Authority requires separation. It requires distance from the forces that weaken your clarity. Consider the warrior who sharpens his blade. He does not do it in the middle of the battlefield. He withdraws. He finds stillness. He gives his full attention to the edge because he understands that when the moment arrives, hesitation will cost him everything. Your mind is no different. It has grown dull from constant use without restoration. It has grown weak from constant dependence without resistance. You have allowed it to become a servant to impulse, rather than a master of intention. And so you must withdraw, not forever, but long enough to remember what it feels like to belong to yourself. When you step away from noise, something uncomfortable happens first. You begin to notice the restlessness within you, the urge to reach for distraction, the instinct to escape stillness. You will feel the pull of your old habits like invisible hands trying to drag you back into the familiar. This is the moment most people fail. They interpret this discomfort as a sign that something is wrong, but it is not wrong. It is evidence. Evidence that you have been dependent. Evidence that your mind has been conditioned to avoid itself. If you endure this phase, something begins to change. Slowly, quietly, your thoughts begin to settle. Your attention begins to strengthen. You begin to observe rather than react. And in this observation, you begin to see clearly. You see how much of your life has been driven by unconscious patterns. You see how often you have betrayed your own priorities for temporary comfort. You see how easily you have been influenced by the presence of others, not because you are weak, but because you have never been taught to stand alone. Standing alone is not a physical act. It is a mental one. It is the ability to remain rooted in your judgment even when there is no one to validate it. It is the ability to act according to your principles even when no one is watching. It is the ability to endure your own company without the need for escape. This is where inner authority is born, not in the presence of applause, but in the absence of interference, because when there is no noise, your decisions become your own. Your discipline becomes your own. Your identity becomes your own. You are no longer performing. You are no longer adjusting yourself to fit the expectations of the moment. You are no longer negotiating with your weakness. You begin to develop a relationship with yourself that is based on honesty rather than illusion. You begin to trust yourself, not because you feel confident, but because you have proven reliable. You have done what you said you would do. You have remained when it would have been easier to escape, and this trust changes you. It alters the way you carry yourself. It alters the way you speak. It alters the way you think. You no longer seek permission to exist as you are. There is a certain calm that emerges in those who have withdrawn long enough to find themselves. It is not loud. It does not demand attention, but it is unmistakable. It is the calm of someone who is not easily moved by external forces. The calm of someone who has faced his own mind and did not run from it. People sense this, even if they cannot explain it. They sense that you are no longer easily influenced. They sense that your approval is not easily earned. They sense that you are not governed by the same impulses that govern them. This is authority, not the authority of position, not the authority of status, but the authority of self-mastery. And it begins the moment you choose to step away, not because the world deserves your absence, but because you deserve your presence. Discipline forged in silence becomes unbreakable in the world. Most men speak of discipline as if it were a performance. They speak of it in front of others. They display it when eyes are watching. They measure it by how it is perceived, rather than how it is lived. But what is performed can also be abandoned. What is displayed can also be withdrawn. And what depends on witnesses cannot survive in isolation. This is why so many appear strong in moments of visibility, yet collapse in moments of privacy. Their discipline was never their own. It was borrowed from the presence of others. True discipline is not what you do when you are seen. It is what you do when there is no reward for doing it. It is what you do when there is no praise waiting for you at the end. It is what you do when no one would ever know if you chose the easier path instead, because in that moment, there is no audience to deceive. There is only you and the decision that defines you. Silence removes the temptation to perform. It removes the illusion. That effort must be witnessed to matter. In silence, there is no one to impress, no one to validate you, no one to remind you of who you said you wanted to be. You must remember it yourself. You must enforce it yourself. And this is where discipline stops being an act and becomes an identity. In the beginning, it feels heavy. You will feel the resistance of your old self, the one that lived according to mood rather than principle, the one that negotiated with discomfort, the one that waited to feel ready before acting. That version of you will speak loudly in the silence. It will offer you excuses that sound reasonable. It will tell you that rest is deserved, that delay is harmless, that you can begin tomorrow without consequence. And because there is no one else present, its voice will seem convincing. But discipline is not the absence of excuses. It is the refusal to obey them. When you choose action in silence, you are making a decision that carries no immediate recognition. You are choosing effort that will not be seen. You are choosing hardship that will not be understood. And this is precisely why it strengthens you. Because you are no longer acting for the sake of appearance. You are acting for the sake of alignment. You are proving something not to the world, but to yourself. Every time you rise when it would have been easier to remain still. You placed another stone in the foundation of your character. Every time you continue when it would have been easier to stop, you reinforce something within you that cannot be easily shaken. These moments appear small. They appear insignificant. But they are not. They are the private negotiations that determine your public strength. The world only sees the outcome. It does not see the countless decisions that created it. It does not see the mornings when you forced yourself forward without motivation. It does not see the nights when you remain committed without energy. It does not see the internal resistance you overcame when no one would have blamed you for surrendering. This is why discipline formed in silence becomes unbreakable, because it was never dependent on conditions. It was never dependent on emotion. It was never dependent on approval. Emotion is unreliable. It rises and falls without your consent. It abandons you when you need it most. If you build your discipline on emotion, it will collapse with it. But when you build your discipline on decision, it remains. Because a decision can be honored even when emotion disappears. There will be days when you do not feel capable. Days when your body feels heavy and your mind feels clouded. Days when nothing inside you desires effort. These days reveal the truth of your discipline. Because anyone can act when they feel strong. Anyone can commit when they feel inspired. But the one who continues when inspiration is absent is the one who becomes unbreakable. Silence teaches you this. It removes the external forces that once carried you. It removes the encouragement you relied on. It removes the pressure you used as motivation, and it leaves you alone with your responsibility. Responsibility is a burden that cannot be shared. Others can support you, but they cannot carry you. Others can guide you, but they cannot walk for you. At some point, you must stand without assistance. At some point, you must act without encouragement. In silence, you discover whether you are capable of this. At first, you may fail. You may hesitate. You may return to old patterns. This is not a sign that you are incapable. It is a sign that you are unpracticed. Discipline is not something you claim. It is something you build. And like anything built, it requires repetition. Each time you choose discipline, you weaken the hold of your old habits. Each time you refuse to obey your impulses, you remind yourself that they do not control you. Each time you act in alignment with your intention, you strengthen your authority over yourself. Authority over yourself is the only authority that cannot be taken from you. Others can remove your status. Others can remove your possessions. Others can remove your opportunities. But no one can remove the discipline you have earned in silence. Because it does not exist outside of you. It exists within you. This is why those who have forged discipline in silence do not fear the world. They do not fear difficulty. They do not fear adversity. Because they have already faced resistance in its purest form. They have faced themselves. The world offers distractions, but distractions only weaken those who depend on stimulation. The world offers temptation, but temptation only defeats those who depend on comfort. The world offers pressure, but pressure only breaks those who depend on ease. When your discipline was formed in silence, none of these things hold power over you, because your strength was not formed in favorable conditions. It was formed in their absence. You become someone who does not need to be watched to remain committed. Someone who does not need to be reminded to remain aligned. Someone who does not need to feel motivated to remain in motion. You begin to trust yourself in a way you never have before. Not because you believe in yourself, but because you have witnessed yourself. You have seen what you do when it is difficult. You have seen what you do when it is inconvenient. You have seen what you do when there is no reward waiting for you. And this knowledge changes the way you move through the world. You stop negotiating with weakness. You stop waiting for the perfect moment. You stop depending on external forces to create internal action. You act because you decided to act. And when you carry this into the world, it becomes visible, not through your words, but through your consistency. Others will wonder how you remain steady when circumstances are not. They will wonder how to continue when others stop. They will wonder how to endure without complaint. They will not see the silence that created you. They will only see the strength that emerged from it. Transformation requires the death of the former self. There's a version of you that cannot follow you where you are going. It wears your face. It speaks with your voice. It carries your memories, your habits, your familiar excuses. It has walked with you for years, so closely that you have mistaken it for your identity. You defend it without question. You protect it without thought. And yet it is the very thing that prevents you from becoming what you were meant to be. Most men believe transformation is an addition. They believe they must add strength, add discipline, add knowledge, add new habits. But they fail to understand that before anything can be added, something must be removed. Before something new can live, something old must die. And this death is not physical, it is psychological. It is the slow and deliberate dismantling of the person you have allowed yourself to remain. This is not a comfortable process, because the former self does not disappear willingly. It resists. It bargains. It reminds you of how safe it feels to remain unchanged. It tells you that you are already enough. It tells you that change is unnecessary, that effort is excessive, that discomfort is avoidable, and because this voice has protected you from pain in the past, you trust it, but understand what it has truly protected you from. It has protected you from growth. It has protected you from responsibility. It has protected you from the weight of your potential. You cannot become powerful while protecting your weakness. You cannot become disciplined while preserving your indulgence. You cannot become unrecognizable while clinging to familiarity. There comes a moment when you must look at yourself without mercy, not with hatred, but with honesty. You must see clearly the patterns that have defined you, the delays you justified, the promises you broke to yourself, the comfort you chose instead of progress, the distractions you embraced instead of purpose. This is the moment most people turn away, because it is easier to lie to yourself than to confront yourself. It is easier to remain incomplete than to endure the process of reconstruction. But if you do not confront it, it will remain. It will continue to shape your decisions. It will continue to limit your actions. It will continue to keep you within the boundaries of who you have always been. The former self survives through repetition. It survives every time you choose the familiar over the necessary. It survives every time you delay what you know must be done. It survives every time you say, I will change, and then return to the same patterns that defined you before. And so its death requires interruption. You must interrupt the patterns that sustain it. You must refuse the behaviors that reinforce it. You must deny the comfort it has grown dependent on. This will feel unnatural, because you are breaking agreements you made with yourself long ago. Agreements to remain small. Agreements to remain comfortable. Agreements to remain the person others expect you to be. There will be moments when you feel divided. One part of you moving forward, another part pulling you back. One part of you demanding change, another part begging for relief. This conflict is not a sign of failure. It is a sign that the former self is losing its control. It will try to convince you that you are losing yourself. But what you are truly losing is your limitation. You must understand that your former self was built through unconscious decisions. It was built through repetition without awareness. It was built through years of choosing what was easy instead of what was necessary, and because it was built through repetition, it can only be dismantled through repetition. Every time you act differently, you weaken its structure. Every time you refuse its impulses, you loosen its hold. Every time you endure discomfort without retreat, you separate yourself from it. This is not dramatic. It is quiet. It happens in moments no one else sees. It happens in the decisions that appear insignificant. But these decisions accumulate, and slowly, the former self begins to fade. You will notice it in the way you think. Situations that once controlled you will lose their power. Habits that once defined you will lose their appeal. Excuses that once convinced you will lose their credibility. You begin to see them for what they are. Not parts of you, but patterns you adopted. This realization changes everything. Because once you see that your former self was constructed, you realize it can also be abandoned. But abandonment requires courage. Because the former self, for all its weakness, is familiar. It knows how to survive. It knows how to avoid pain. It knows how to protect you from failure. The unknown version of you offers no such guarantees. It demands effort without promise. It demands sacrifice without certainty. It demands faith without evidence. And so you stand between two identities. One that is comfortable, but limiting. Another that is uncertain, but expanding. Most people choose comfort. They return to the former self. They convince themselves that transformation was unnecessary. They accept their limitations as their identity. But there are some who do not return. Some who endure the uncertainty. Some who allow the former self to die completely. This death is not marked by a single moment. It is marked by consistency. It is marked by the repeated refusal to become who you once were. You stop reacting the way you used to react. You stop thinking the way you used to think. You stop choosing the way you used to choose. At first, it feels like you are pretending, like you are acting as someone else. But you are not pretending. You are practicing, because identity is not something you find. It is something you build. The former self was built through years of unconscious practice. The new self is built through years of conscious practice. And there will be moments when the former self tries to return, moments when exhaustion weakens your resistance, moments when doubt weakens your certainty, moments when comfort calls you back. You must recognize these moments for what they are, not failures, but tests of whether you are willing to remain who you are becoming. Because the former self never disappears completely on its own. It waits. It waits for permission to return. It waits for moments of weakness. It waits for moments of forgetfulness. You must deny it permission. You must continue forward even when it would be easier to return. Because the man you are becoming cannot coexist with the man you once were. Ignorance and obscurity builds power that applause never could. There is a misunderstanding that greatness must always be visible. That influence is proven by the number of eyes that watch you, the ears that listen, the voices that echo your name. Men believe that power requires recognition, that authority demands witnesses, that success is measured by the applause of others. And so they chase visibility, they speak loudly, they post eagerly. They announce their ambitions before they have even been realized. They seek the approval of the world to validate the effort that they barely commit. And in doing so, they mistake attention for achievement, noise for mastery, acknowledgement for transformation. But true power is silent. It is forged not in the stadiums filled with clamor, but in the small, private arenas where no one is watching. It is the result of action without fanfare, of commitment without reward, of struggle without recognition. It is endurance cultivated in the shadows, and those who endure there, unseen and uncelebrated, build strength that applause can never grant. Because it is not given, it is earned within. Obscurity is a crucible. In the quiet, you confront the rawest version of yourself. No one praises your decisions. No one admires your discipline. No one comforts you when your body or mind screams to stop. There is only you and the work that must be done. There is only you and the silence that watches, impartial and relentless. This environment strips away pretension. It removes the comfort of distraction. It forces you to measure yourself by standards that are internal, uncompromising, and absolute. There is no one to flatter your ego. There is no one to excuse your failures. There is no one to shield you from the truth that you are either committed or you are not. Endurance in obscurity is not easy because it requires a confrontation with what most men avoid, the reality of their own weaknesses. In the absence of others' attention, the excuses you once relied upon are laid bare. The habits that were harmless in public, when observed, are exposed as insufficient. The comfort you relied upon becomes obvious as stagnation. Every delay, every hesitation, every rationalization is unmasked. In this silence, you cannot hide behind charisma, charm, or appearances. You cannot rely on the influence of others to buoy your confidence. You cannot claim achievement when the evidence exists only within you, and this exposure, though uncomfortable, is precisely what cultivates enduring strength. The world will not see you in these moments. They will not witness the nights when you force yourself to continue despite exhaustion. They will not observe the mornings when you rise before the sun. When all other distractions are still asleep, they will not notice the hours spent mastering your craft while others waste theirs. They will not cheer for the sacrifices, the consistency, the repeated refusal to give into weakness. They will only see the finished result, the polished outcome, the success that seems effortless, and that is exactly as it should be. For the power built in obscurity does not seek validation, it seeks mastery. Men often misunderstand this. They equate recognition with value. They assume that if no one applauds, no progress has been made. They mistake public attention for authority. But authority that relies on applause is fragile. It can be taken, stolen, or diminished the moment the crowd looks elsewhere. Endurance in silence builds authority that no one can remove because it is internal, self-sustained, and independent of circumstance. Obscurity teaches patience. It teaches the discipline to continue when there is no immediate reward. It teaches humility because in private struggle, there's no platform to inflate your ego. It teaches resilience because every obstacle is faced without the crutch of others' validation. It teaches focus because when the world is not watching, only your own standards guide your actions. This is the education of strength that applause cannot provide because the loudest teacher is often the one who remains unseen. There will be days when you question the purpose of enduring without recognition, when the silence seems endless and your efforts appear futile, when every instinct within you urges you to abandon the unseen struggle in favor of something noticed, something praised, something easier. These are the moments that define you. These are the moments when the difference between fleeting performance and unbreakable power is determined. To persist here is to prove to yourself that your commitment is not conditional on external reward. To persist here is to internalize strength so that it no longer requires confirmation. To persist here is to endure in obscurity, and through that endurance, to cultivate a power that cannot be borrowed, cannot be stolen, and cannot be ignored. Those who understand this principle act without recognition. They move without spectators. They grow without applause. They understand that true power is not a gift given by the world. It is a possession claimed in solitude, earned in private, and refined in the absence of distraction. They accept the loneliness that comes with being unseen, knowing that the moment of visibility is not the measure of their effort, and that applause, when it finally comes, is merely a reflection of the work that has already been completed. There is a transformation in enduring without recognition. The man who relies on applause is brittle. He is swayed by popularity, distracted by praise, and weakened by neglect. The man who endures in obscurity is unyielding. He is guided by his own judgment, fortified by repeated self-discipline, and tempered in the fires of persistent effort. One becomes dependent on the fickle winds of attention. while the other becomes independent of them entirely. Obscurity forces you to confront the truth of your abilities. When no one is watching, you see clearly whether you are capable of carrying the weight you claim to carry. You see whether you can remain committed when there is no reward, whether you can endure discomfort without complaint, whether you can persist despite exhaustion. In public, effort can be amplified by spectacle. In private, effort is measured only by its effect, by the results that only time and consistency reveal. This is where unbreakable power is formed, in the trials that leave no witnesses, in the effort that must be motivated by nothing but conviction, in the commitment that requires no validation. Most men avoid this path. They fear being unseen, being ignored, being unknown. They chase applause as if it were the essence of achievement, and in doing so, they weaken themselves. They never learn the lessons that silence teaches: patience, focus, resilience, self-reliance, and the quiet certainty that comes from proving oneself without the eyes of others. They remain strong in appearance, but fragile in substance. The one who endures in obscurity is not content with mediocrity. He is not distracted by recognition. He is driven by the pursuit of mastery itself. He understands that every repetition, every sacrifice, every unseen struggle is an investment in a power that will endure beyond circumstance. The applause may never come, or it may arrive long after the work is done, but the strength will remain, impervious to external opinion, immune to circumstance, and indestructible in its foundation. Ignorance and obscurity shapes a person into someone unshakable, because they have faced the discomfort of being unnoticed and still acted, because they have endured the isolation of effort and still persisted, because they have trained their mind and body in silence and still risen to meet the demands of their potential. This is a power that applause cannot grant, because it is self-made, self-sustained, and impossible to imitate. And when this person finally emerges into visibility, when the world finally observes their results, it will see only the product, the finished form, the disciplined mastery. The crowd may marvel, the critics may acknowledge, the world may applaud, but none of it will matter to the one who endured, for their authority, their strength, and their power were never dependent on recognition. They were built in silence, in solitude, in the private crucible of persistence. And that is why this power is unbreakable. Return not to impress others, but because you have mastered yourself. Too often, men measure their worth by the reflection of their presence. In the eyes of others, they seek to be admired, to be praised, to be recognized, and in doing so, they surrender the very thing that defines them, the self. They perform, they display, they speak loudly, they act strategically, all in hopes that someone will see them as greater than they truly are. They build a life around impression, around appearance, around validation from outside. And while the world may grant them applause, it cannot grant them mastery. For mastery is never public. It is never contingent on recognition. It is never earned by being observed. It is earned in solitude, in honesty, in repeated choices that demand commitment to yourself alone. To return because you have mastered yourself is to act with a quiet authority that requires no approval. It is to carry a presence that commands respect not by words, but by the weight of your own discipline. It is to walk through the world carrying your own measure of power, unaffected by the applause or criticism of others. Those who have returned in this way are unrecognizable, not because they sought to shock, not because they sought to boast, but because the transformation they underwent is so thorough, so complete, so deliberate, that the world sees only the result, while they know the labor that produced it. Mastery of self begins with knowledge, but it does not end there. It is not enough to know your weaknesses, your impulses, your tendencies. Knowledge must be translated into action, into repetition, into habit, until it becomes reflex. The man who has mastered himself no longer debates every decision. He no longer negotiates with his own mind. He no longer waits for motivation, inspiration, or external permission. He acts according to principle. He acts according to standard. He acts because he has chosen to act. The world does not make him. He makes himself. This process requires a willingness to confront discomfort, to endure it, to walk through it, to persist despite it. The world offers innumerable distractions, indulgence, opinion, temptation, procrastination. These are the tests of self-mastery. When you succumb to them, you betray yourself. When you resist them, you forge strength. And the man who returns after mastering himself is the man who has resisted far more than anyone will ever see. He has endured more than anyone will ever know. He has sacrificed more than anyone will ever understand. And because he has done so, privately, he carries power that cannot be measured by applause or recognition. To return after such mastery is to move through life without the need to justify yourself. You no longer explain your choices to please others. You no longer seek to align yourself with the expectations of the crowd. You no longer fear judgment because you have already judged yourself. And this freedom is its own authority, its own force, its own recognition. When you have mastered yourself, your presence is enough. Your actions speak without announcement. Your decisions matter without explanation. You are the measure, and no external validation can add to it or diminish it. Consider the nature of influence. The man who seeks to impress must constantly perform. He must constantly adjust. He must constantly measure and respond. He is fragile because his power depends on perception. The man who has mastered himself is free from this dependence. His influence is quiet, steadfast, and unwavering because it emerges from competence, not appearance. He does not react to external pressures because he has already met his own standards. He does not seek applause because he knows the work has been done, and the results exist whether the world notices or not. There is a profound discipline in this approach. To act without expectation of recognition requires patience. To endure the labor of mastery without acknowledgement requires perseverance. To sustain commitment to yourself in the absence of reward requires courage. Most men flee from such solitude, from such private rigor, from such quiet accountability. They mistake visibility for progress and approval for success. They measure their lives by the reactions of others, rather than by their own principles, and because of this, they remain untested, incomplete, and susceptible to failure when circumstances remove the spectators. Returning because you have mastered yourself is the ultimate form of independence. It is the realization that no one else can create the conditions for your greatness. No one else can enforce your discipline. No one else can sustain your effort. You are the architect, the craftsman, and the judge of your own capacity. And when you return to the world from this place, you are no longer vulnerable to its opinions. You are not seeking approval because you do not require it. You are not performing for applause because you are not performing at all. You are present because you are compelled to be, and your presence carries the gravity of self-realization. Mastery also requires consistency in the unseen hours. It is not created in moments of convenience. It is forged when there is nothing external to guide or reward you, when the world is quiet, and the temptations of ease and indulgence whisper in your ear, when no one would notice if you abandon the task at hand. This is where true mastery is tested. And it is here that the man who returns powerful has proven himself, not because he has been praised, but because he has persisted, not because he has been watched, but because he has endured, not because he has been congratulated, but because he has remained loyal to his own standards. The mastery of self transforms perception. You begin to see the world differently because you are no longer reacting to it for comfort or approval. You no longer bend to the expectations of others because they no longer define you. You measure everything by principle, by reason, by standard. The trivial opinions of others no longer distract you. The pressures to conform no longer sway you. The applause of the crowd is irrelevant because your own judgment has become absolute. And in this clarity, you act with confidence, with precision, and with authority. Those who have mastered themselves also command patience. They understand that life is a long process, that the cultivation of skill, discipline, and character is measured in time and effort rather than immediate recognition. They understand that true influence cannot be hurried. They understand that visibility and approval are temporary, but the power earned through self-mastery endures. And because they understand this, they can act deliberately, resist impulse, and pursue long-term objectives without distraction. Their vision is not clouded by immediate gratification, and their will is not weakened by temporary discomfort. The man who returns after mastering himself embodies a quiet inevitability. The world may resist, obstacles may appear, challenges may rise, but he moves with the certainty of one who has proven his capacity in the private arenas of discipline, endurance, and reflection. He does not boast because he does not need to. He does not seek to impress because he no longer relies on external validation. His authority emerges naturally from the mastery he has achieved within, and it is unshakable because it does not depend on the world to uphold it. Return after mastery also brings clarity. You understand what you can control and what you cannot. You act where action is meaningful. You conserve effort where it would be wasted. You prioritize substance over appearance, reality over illusion, results over recognition, and this clarity frees you from the distractions that consume those who seek only to impress. You no longer expend energy seeking attention, flattering the crowd, or performing to be accepted. Every action, every decision, every step is deliberate and purposeful. In the end, returning because you have mastered yourself is an act of profound independence. It is the declaration that your authority resides within, not without. It is the demonstration that your discipline is internal, not imposed. It is the proof that your value is measured, not by applause, but by the depth of your effort, the consistency of your action, and the fidelity of your standards. Those who witness you may marvel, but it is of no consequence because you have returned for yourself alone, and in that, you are free, unshakable, and complete.